everybody, what's going on? This is Andrew Christopherson, and I'm with my good friend Lenny Francis.
What's up? How you doing?
What's
Andrew, you
up,
doing well?
everybody? I'm doing
Yeah.
so well. How are you?
I'm good. Doing really well. I'm super excited about our first episode of this show. So
Th- This is
take it
called
away, buddy.
HardKnock Crypto, and we are just two guys that have been friends for a while and that are both interested in crypto, Bitcoin, how it all works, Ethereum. Let's talk about Doge, just so many things. Uh, Lenny and I started talking about this probably, I think, in 21, and Lenny is really into metaverse stuff and NFTs and has his own 100 different businesses, but one of them we can talk about is just how it all works and interconnected with gaming and a whole bunch. But anyways, all that to say, I reached out to Lenny a few years ago and said, "Hey, are you integrating crypto into this at all?" He's like, "No, but I need to. Tell me about it." So that just like started us talking about crypto, and so we thought, as we were talking, like a month ago, hey, we should
That's right.
just, as we were at a retreat, hanging out, talking every night, and we said this should just be a podcast, us just hanging out and talking. And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it," or at least one of us did the other way. So we thought we'd invite you guys. We're doing this anyways, and so we figured let's just make a podcast about it, put it on YouTube, put it on the podcast stuff, and see where we get, because we're just two guys that are doing our own businesses and different ventures, and crypto is super interesting, and we think it's the future of finance. And so we thought, hey, let's go with everybody else. So Lenny, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
why you're interested in crypto?
Yeah, Andrew. I think were pivotal in getting me really excited about crypto because it was in 2021. We had right in the middle of COVID. I was wondering what can I do while I'm sitting at home, and so for fun I launched an esport company because you could
For
do that
fun.
from your for fun.
I
And
love
I
it.
knew I knew nothing about esports, but I knew some young people who really enjoyed it, and I said, I think I could do this. At
Huh.
least I can provide the business side, the advisory and consulting, and we could do this together. And so we launched that, and we got a few thousand people following us. And you started talking about you asked me, are you integrating any crypto into this? And I was like, I don't really know
Yeah.
enough about it, but in speaking to you got me really excited about it. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. So right away, like I do, what did I do? I went and I bought a ton of crypto. I knew
Man,
nothing
good for you.
about it. Yeah. So I'm one of those people. Like if there's a pool, I ask what is the
Uh-huh.
deepest side of the pool, and then I
Let's
go and I
jump.
jump right into it.
Let's
Right? Let's
jump.
jump into it. So I made a significant investment into crypto, thinking
Hmm.
that um, I'm going to buy digital real estate. I'm going to start building stuff in the metaverse. I'm going to do all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And literally the next week, my investment, the value was half. It just off a cliff.
And this was
Yeah,
like, yeah, late 21, literally at the peak of the
that's
bull market. And
that's
I
correct.
I just enjoy your enthusiasm for it. And that you're still like, hey, that's not just a ripoff 2 years later, but hey, there still might be something to it.
Hey, well, you know what? When that happened, I only had two choices.
Yeah.
One was to get out completely and say I
Right.
just took a huge loss,
Yeah.
or I'm just going to hold on to it and see what
Yeah.
happens. Um, and I didn't know enough to make that decision.
Sure.
It was way too early for me, and I decided I'm just going to hold it.
Yeah.
And during that time, we moved to India from the U.S. From New York, I went to New Delhi, and the reason we did that was I just felt just global economies were shifting to the east, and so I
Mm.
have a company that helps American companies enter into the Indian marketplace and doing advisory and consulting. But I thought, you know what, I could step away from this for a little while and just focus on that, and kind of bury it under a rock somewhere, not think about it. I think, Andrew, I even said to you, hey Andrew, if it ever bounces back, can you please let me know? Right? I wasn't even logging in to look at it.
Hey guys, we're back. Lenny lives in India, in Greater Noida, and the power comes on and off, and so does the internet. And so he was in the middle of explaining his crypto journey, and now he's back. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. Hey man, where did I leave off? I can't even
I
remember
think
now.
I think you were
Right?
in the middle of like how you had bought all your crypto at the height of the bull market, and then you've been holding it, and you threw
Uh,
me a message that was basically like, "Hey, if Bitcoin ever hits like 40 again, let me know."
I don't even want it. You know what? I wish I bought it at 40. That would have been actually even better for me. Okay.
I
Don't
love it. I love it.
right?
You
So,
bought it at like
yeah,
68, didn't you? That was like the all-time
dude.
high. Let's not talk. The
Liz,
specifics don't matter.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Can we not talk
Yeah,
about this? Like, my wife's
specifics
not
don't matter.
watching this, so it's
Just don't let her
right. So,
know. Sometimes we
yeah,
don't have to
no,
talk about that.
yeah. I'm hoping this bores her enough that she'll be like, man, I
So
don't want to
much.
watch this.
No,
Yeah.
she
So,
sees you enough.
no,
She sees you enough.
right. I sent you a message. I said, listen, if it ever goes
Yeah,
back up, let me know
yeah,
because I'm leaving. I'm leaving the country,
yeah,
not coming back. I won't be back for a few years, right?
yeah,
And but then we picked up the conversation, like you said
yeah,
a month ago, sitting on the beach,
yeah,
right? And
yep,
we just started every night, 9 p.m. Let's just
yeah,
have let's just talk, hang out, and talk about stuff. And
yeah,
that's where we should start a podcast,
yeah.
right? And so, hey, from my perspective, you're like the crypto expert, and I am the crypto
Super
dummy,
expert.
as I just shared that anybody who
Hmm.
buys at 65,
I love
no,
it.
I didn't,
Hmm.
but right, is somewhat of a crypto dummy, but crash test dummy apparently.
Uh-huh.
Um,
It's good.
you know. Anyway, we're all good though. I'm glad we're talking about it. Are you going to share a little bit about your
We're
journey
good.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. I think so I got interested in crypto back in 2017, and I'm originally from the States. I'm American. I'm from Montana, and I ended up in India, and that's where Lenny and I met years ago. And then I remember meeting a guy in uh, India in 2016, and he was telling me about Bitcoin, and I don't know. Um, I didn't know what Bitcoin is, but I've always been a tech guy. I've always been interested in just the latest stuff that's happening and going on. So he's like, "Oh yeah, on the dark web, I get paid in Bitcoin," and I'm like, "I didn't even know there was a dark web. I don't know what that means, but it sounds interesting." But that was the first time I remembered hearing about Bitcoin, and then the next year was 2017, and 2017 was one of the peak blow off years in Bitcoin. And I remember kind of following it like, oh, this is interesting. Like it was at like $8,000 a coin, and now it's at like $10,000 a coin, and it just kept building. And I remember talking to my brother-in-law, who's a good friend of mine, and being like, hey, have you seen this whole crypto thing? And he's like, oh yeah. He's telling me about his friends and him. At that point, he was kind of like my crypto expert because I didn't even know how to buy anything at that point, and I was in India. And in India at that point, I didn't like I couldn't figure out how to purchase anything, and so I was like, "Hey, are you gonna buy this Bitcoin?" He's like, "No, Bitcoin's way overpriced. You got to find the next low cap altcoin and go for that." And so anyways, blow off top. Bitcoin hits 20 in 2017, hits 20,000 a coin, and then it goes into a bear market, and it goes back down to 4 or 5 thousand bucks. But I remember just being super interested in it, and I spent about a year and a half in America, and at that time, I was like, I'm just going to start reading books on Bitcoin. And so I read a couple, just like kind of figuring out what blockchain is, figuring out. just all kind of the basics of just how does this work and is it important? And it started me thinking uh, just about the future of finance and just how everything has gone digital, and like our music is digital now, and it used to be when Lenny was young, it was 8 tracks and records, right?
All right. That's not an
Was it
exaggeration. All
records
right,
and
come
then
on,
eight
man.
tracks? Was it records first and then 8 tracks, right? Because
All
I'm
right,
I'm a
listen.
late millennial. I'm
Are
late
you?
30s. Lenny is older than
You
that,
got to be.
right?
Yes, I'm. I remember the '70s, and
Uh huh.
I do remember 8 tracks. My dad has an eight
Yeah.
track player,
Come
and
on.
I was like, "Come on, yeah, exactly." So, I
Yeah.
do
And
you really not
so,
know about 8 tracks? Which one came
I
first?
mean, my dad had an 8 track. I've just never, I think I've
Okay.
seen him when I was a kid.
Oh
And
my
like,
gosh, I feel
I
so
came
old
in
now.
with, I came in with tapes, and my first car had a tape player, and I put it in. And then in the middle of high school, I had the CD booklet with 500
Yeah.
CDs in it that I'd whip out when I was driving around and put on my lap and steer with my knees as I pick my CD and put in my CD player. But then
You know what's
I
hilarious, by the way?
remember
I'll tell you.
what, what?
I was gonna say the hilarious thing is that there's someone who's gonna watch this and say,
Uh,
tape, CD players. Like there are gonna be people who
right.
have no idea what you're talking about. So
I mean, the
I
six
love
people
that.
that do watch this will be super interested in that. So,
This is true. This is true.
anyways, what I remember talking with a guy after, like, at one of my workplaces, and just talking about, hey, the future of music is just going digital. It's all on our computers. And he's like, oh, yeah, for sure. And I still remember the day that I got rid of all my CDs because I was like, this is redundant. I just have everything. And that was even before
Mhm.
streaming. That was when you just bought every digital thing on iTunes, and now it's all streaming. So, like, long story short, we can do that with everything. Video, same. VHS to DVD to now just streaming. And so 2018, I'm thinking, I mean, that's where everything is going digital. And so obviously it makes sense that that's where finance goes. And
Mhm.
so I'm a guy that I'm like you. We're very similar in if I'm going to learn something, I need hands-on with it. Now I didn't throw I don't know however many X dollars you did. But in 2020, COVID crash, market goes way down. I think to myself, hey, this is when I got to get into crypto. And I started slow. I think I bought $100 worth of Bitcoin and just a little bit of Ethereum. But I figured out, like, okay, this Coinbase place seems legit. I'm going to buy it off there. Just going to see how it works. Okay, I did it. I've got it. And then a couple days go by and I see how the market works. It goes up and I can make a little bit of money. Oh, that's interesting. I sell it now. And just then I started buying some more and just kind of accumulating. And then the government did a cool thing and started sending us free money, right? You remember that? 2020, they're like,
Yes, I
here's some
do remember
stimulus
that.
checks. And I'm like,
All right.
hey, this is some free money. I can just start. Like, what am I going to do with it? Everybody's sitting at home, like you said. I'm not going to run out and buy anything. I'll just treat it as an investment and start throwing a little more and a little more. And as I did
Hmm.
that, stuff stuff like how to hold this crypto kind of came up. Like, okay, I shouldn't keep it on exchange. I started looking at what is a hot wallet, what is a cold wallet, just like basic things that as you progress in crypto, you start to kind of look at and to understand. And so that was 2020. 2021 is when you came in, and that's when everything went crazy. Like, just overnight, like for weeks at a time, prices kept going up in USD. All of the things kept going. And then in 22, in January, just huge crash of more things. And then even more so in, I think it was in July, and just kind of kept going down and down. And it's been a pretty bear market for the last year and a half plus. But Um, the cool thing is there's a saying in crypto that says, I'm in it for the technology, which is 90% a lie for most people because most people are in it to get rich and then whatever, right?
Right.
But I do think I would say this too. Back in COVID time, I remember my daughter, who at the time was uh, reading this book called What Happened to Penny Candy. And basically, the entire book is from a middle school perspective of inflation and like the thought of, hey, we used to have the very premise of the book, penny candy, and you could get however much for just pennies. And that so resonated with me. So I stole the book and read it. And I'm like, everything in it is like, yeah, we cannot purchase what we used to be able to with that same amount. It's just gone berserk. And so I started really looking at inflation and thinking about how can we save money that we have, especially if you don't own like a house. And that's always a big deal, especially uh, for Americans who want to store value, want to have a place for your family to live, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't have that, like, how do you get in that cycle of, like my parents, buying houses from the time they got married, and then they would live in it, and then they would sell it, and then they would do the upgrade, and then they would buy it, live in it, sell it, upgrade, until they're where they're at today in a great home that is valued super high because the housing market has just gone berserk in America. But if you don't have one, like I don't own a house, and I don't know if you do, but
Hmm.
if I want to get into that, literally the median household price or the median house price in America these days is like $500,000. How how am I if I'm just coming into that, I can't do that. Like when my parents bought their first house, it was $20,000 for the entire
Right.
house. That's what it was.
Well, I mean, today the average person would find it very difficult to enter into those kind of spaces. Now, just
Yeah,
before we leap forward here, there's
yeah.
a couple of things that I like. I at some point in later episodes, I think we're going to have to address a couple of terms here, right? So I'm going to stop you along the way and say, "Hey, what is
Do
that?"
it.
Right. So,
I love
so
it.
in the future,
I'll do the
so
same.
we're going to at some point stop and say, let's talk about blockchain, right? And I think that
Sure.
you had mentioned it. We may even
Yeah,
actually at some point need to talk about inflation, right? There
yeah.
are people who might not understand how inflation works and what is the impact of inflation. We might actually even have to
Oh,
touch
for
on
sure.
that because
Yeah,
there's a lot of foundational stuff. I
yeah,
think that we probably need to build towards. Now,
yeah,
you also shared a little bit about how you saw this fluctuation. So it was at
yeah.
4,000, 5,000,
Right,
then it went up to
right.
20,000. When I
Yeah.
was buying, it was at 45, and
Hmm.
then now it was at 20. I think it went down to
I
like
think we're at 26
16
right
at
now.
some point. Yeah,
Yeah,
26 right
yeah,
now. And so
yeah.
people are looking at this and they're going, "Man, look at this crazy fluctuation."
Right. Yeah,
And so it's not even, is it real? First, we need to answer the question, is it real? Is it something that I
yeah.
should really, like, I should put my money into? But
Right.
how do I ride this wave that I'm just seeing?
Yeah,
How does it work for me if I
yeah,
was an investor? Right? Like
yeah.
I bought in at a certain point because I actually thought, because you were saying, right, there was this huge wave, and I
Hmm.
thought, well, it's, 40 something. Okay, it's going to go up to 60. It might go up to
Yeah.
100,000. So
Right.
if I don't buy today, I'm going to miss this wave. Right? I'm going to
Yeah.
miss
A
this
little bit of
opportunity.
FOMO. Right.
Right? Like,
Fear,
so,
fear of missing
you
out.
know,
Fear of missing out hits us all the time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But at the same time, like, you're in your 30s, right? So I'm in my
Yep.
50s. In my 50s, I'm in that sweet spot where I look back and I see what I've done up to this point, right? In terms of future proofing for myself and for my children, right? And maybe even my
Yeah.
children's children, right? I
Right.
can look back at what I've done, but I also, now it's not like I'm, maybe in my 80s where I could say, my window of opportunity is much smaller. in my early 50s, I still have another 20, maybe even 30 years
For
to
sure.
plan and execute on plans that I'm working out.
Yeah.
So for I still have runway.
Yeah.
So what can I do in my 50s that I could take advantage of something that's new that in 30 years it might be the standard. It
Yeah.
might be how organizations, right, are how they operate, how economies operate, how transactions happen,
Mm.
right? I have that, and from an investment perspective, maybe it does get to a hundred
Sure.
thousand dollars
Right.
per Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So I'm in that spot now, right?
Hmm.
When it tanked, I said, you know what, I'm going to hold on to it because I'm in the game
Yeah.
for 30 years from now. I'm not in the
Yeah.
game for next week or a
Right.
month or 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's where um, talking about this. I obviously am at a different point in my life. You're at a different point in your life, but
Yeah.
I think for people who might um, tune into this episode and be watching it, they might come in from they're at different points in their life, and what we're talking about, I think it'll resonate, right? And people want to
Yeah.
hear. And so you're sharing what kind of some of the stuff that you're going through and the thought process. And for me, it was really about what does it look like for me for future proofing for myself, my wife, my
Mm.
children, and potentially for my children's children. I want to
Mm.
do something,
Yeah.
and so maybe this is the place I need to be looking at, right? And so
Mm.
anyway, that's why I'm glad that we're having these type of conversations.
I think it's so important to think about, like you said, going from short-term thinking, and a lot of crypto, if you study crypto history at all, which is literally only 14 to 15 years old from the inception. That's when Bitcoin started in 2009 with Satoshi Nakamoto, programmed the whole
Mhm.
thing, but in 2009. So we are super early in this whole concept. But thinking, oftentimes people have thought, oh, get rich quick. Let's grab the next Doge. Let's grab the next Shibu. Let's grab whatever is on the, we're going to put $100 in it, and then I'm going to sell it for $100,000. And that's happened. You can look at the stories. But if, and it's really neat that these waves have happened, and it's almost like things are settling to where it's what can we really build on here in the future. And something like a Bitcoin that is hard money, there's only 21 million that will ever be produced, and you can see institutional adoption around the corner. Now today it's back down, it's, yeah, like 26,000. But if you can zoom out and think in years instead of days and weeks, and even if your long term is months, don't get into this kind of deal. It's not smart. But if we can shift from I can sell it and make money right now to, hey, what does this look like in 10 years? What does this look like in 20 years? Even like 5 years. Think about that whole concept of music going digital, a video going digital. Where were we at 10 years ago? In 2013, that is literally when the year, because I had moved, and I still remember, I threw all my CDs. I literally threw them in the dump because I was like, I don't need these anymore. But previously to that, I had my book of CDs. If I wanted to listen to music, I'd put it in my CD player, et cetera, et cetera. Now, to me today in 2023, that sounds like it was 20 years ago, but it was 10. And so if we think about that from the perspective of, hey, you and I are hanging out in 2023, what does 2033 look like?
Mhm.
And with AI, with technology just compounding in accelerated ways, 10 years from now will feel like today will feel like 30, 50 years have gone by. And if we can think and get some of those basics out, like, hey, this is not a get rich quick scheme, but this can be an investment into your children, into your grandchildren's life. And so we're going to talk about that kind of thing. We're going to talk about, like, how do we save wealth? And like I said earlier, for so many people it's been homes. Well, if I can't afford that, like, what could I put my money into that is a store of value? And looking at that kind of thing. But what I really like is that you and I are just having this conversation. We're in similar spots. We have kids. Uh, our careers have gone on, and it's 20 years for me into what I'm doing. It's more than that for you. And it's like we're not just beginning in whatever we're doing. We're like in the middle of life, and it's happening. But it's like these thoughts of, hey, for me when I was 20, 6 months was like a long time. It's like, man, maybe even a year, like, wow, a whole year. And now for me, it's like, man, what is 3 years from now? Sounds like kind of a short deal. But what
Yep.
about 10 years from now? Because we're all going to be here. We're all going to be hanging out doing something. So, how can we build uh, for longevity and not, hey, maybe I can get rich in the next few months and that would be amazing?
I will, you know what? I will add, because we're talking about these timelines and looking back, you know,
Yeah.
25 years ago, people were on dial up and they were on AOL chat, right? Like
Yeah.
this is where we're going back, right? Um,
Right.
25 years ago,
Yeah.
like Google launched for the first time. I still remember, and this is how old I am, sitting
Right.
next to my buddy as an engineer, and he says, "Hey, you should check out this site, Google. They do searches faster than anybody." Right. So that's 25 years
Wow.
ago. Think how far we've come now, where we're talking
Yeah.
about AI and we're talking about all these other things that are artificial and, you know, just the technology in general, this huge leap that's happened in 25 years.
Yeah.
So to think that crypto can't go from here in 25 years to being an
The
important
mainstay.
part, yeah, it's not, out of the realm of possibility.
No.
Right. And so that's why I think, like I said, these conversations are important, because that's the almost the why, right? Like, why would we
Yeah.
want to spend time on this? Well, we're prepared. It's almost preparing yourself. And it's not you're preparing, even, I'll tell you, it's not preparing for 25 years from now. Today it's happening,
No, for sure.
right? So
Yeah.
it was a year and a half ago, maybe 18 months ago, that everybody was buying NFTs, digital
Mm-hmm.
artwork, and all these type of
Mm-hmm.
things, and dropping a ton of money
Ton of money.
on it, right?
Yeah.
Part of the reason where I was like, metaverse, like, I'm going to buy real estate in the metaverse. Why did I do, like, why did I even think that that was a thing? Because Atari had bought space. The company
Mm.
Atari had
Sure.
made a significant investment. Snoop Dogg had made an
Oh.
investment. But I'm saying, like, all these people, and I don't know, maybe that's not the best example as to why you should go drop money, but what, right?
I like it though.
However,
Keep telling me.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can't even get into this, but what I'm saying is that, there were legitimate people that you would say, if they're dropping money in there, there's something that they see that I might not see. And so
Sure.
therefore, let me go ahead and let me take a shot at this. I think
Yeah.
we just have to have a much longer view, right? And I
And I
think
think,
that in the process, yeah, go for it.
I mean, I was just gonna say, I think it's really important to see what is smoke and mirrors and what is legit. Because there's a
Right.
lot of smoke and mirrors in crypto. There's a lot of um, phony characters. And if you study in the last year of FTX collapse, Celsius collapse, Voyager collapse, and it's all these, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's all these crypto companies or exchanges that have screwed over a ton of people. And so that's why the last year slash 18 months, it's just been brutal. But we're kind of coming out of the carnage of that and really coming into what is legitimate. And we're going to talk a lot about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the number one cryptocurrency, and it always will be. It's digital gold 2.0. They can't make more of it. There's not a board of trustees at the Bitcoin company. It is literally just digital gold that is available. And if you look at it today, at not just people like you and me that are interested. It's BlackRock, it's Vanguard, it's all these huge institutions that are coming into the space that are going to literally in the next year greenlight millions, hundreds of millions of people that are like, hey, this is how you buy cryptocurrency. And it's like a person like my uncle that two years ago I was talking with. This man is wealthy, has done really well in real estate and traditional markets. And so I just started talking to him about crypto and Bitcoin, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Can I buy that through my bank? Can I buy that through like how do I do that?" And I'm like, "Well, you can't do that, and then you have to like store it." And he's like, "Oh, well, maybe someday." But this is a guy who's not going to have his own cold wallet, and he's not going to probably buy it off Coinbase, even though that's pretty simple. But would he buy it through an ETF that BlackRock delivers? You bet your butt he is. Like, and everybody else is too. And there's just this wall of money that, like we said, in 2 years, maybe three, maybe four, but there's a period of time where it's going to be like this wall is shifted to where it's niche still, even though more and more people are doing things in it. But then all of a sudden, you could blink and it'd be like, oh yeah, obviously everybody has Bitcoin. In fact, like as one example, BlackRock, who really runs the most money in the world, like they are in charge of $9 trillion in assets, which is kind of a big deal. And they came out with a strategy that said, hey, if you want like an aggressive strategy portfolio, you need to put 84.9% of your finances into Bitcoin. This is BlackRock. They manage the most money in the world. And they said, put 84.9% of your finances in Bitcoin and you'll do well. Like, think about that. Nobody is really talking about that except for people that are really into this. But in a couple of years, be like, oh, it's so obvious. Oh, you got rich off of Bitcoin. Anybody can do that. No, it's like, oh, you bought at the wrong time, or you bought digital land or whatever. That's so ridiculous. But it can literally change overnight into where it's like, hey, this is a big deal. And if we can see it now and we can educate ourselves, and not even just ourselves, I think it's super important to like share and learn and grow so you can tell your kids, or you can tell your parents like, hey, maybe just buy a little of this. No, you don't have to put 85% of your wealth into it, although BlackRock's telling you to. But you could put 5%, you could put 2%, you could just buy $100 worth and see how it works.
Yeah, I
So I
think
think it's super
no, and I
important.
agree with you. And I think that we are too far along in the conversation to say, oh, that's going to go away, right? Like it
No,
would
for
be
sure.
yeah. I mean, listen, it would be the largest fraudulent, right, thing
Yeah,
that's ever happened in the
yeah,
history of man if tomorrow was like gone, right?
right.
And so I do think that there's some. I think everybody needs to know something, right? And for example, I don't know enough today, but I
No,
want to learn more, right?
yeah,
And because it's important, and I know that it's going to be around for a while. So if I can take the opportunity right now to just learn as much as I can, so that I can make good decisions in the
mm-hmm.
future, right? And if I can do at some point, there are going to be transactions that are happening, and it's going to require cryptocurrency. I've
Yes,
heard, we may have different opinions about, um, these large investment firms, right?
sure,
We may have, so we may positive or negative, or it doesn't. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter much about what you think about it if you see that this is coming,
yeah,
and you're either going to participate or not. And there are people who will say, you know what, I'm just going to go buy some land and I'm going to farm and I'm going to do this
yeah,
stuff and I'm going to live on my own, right? And we're going to just take care of the family.
yeah,
Well, that's going to make a whole lot of sense until, you decide you need to go buy something and someone says we only deal in cryptocurrency.
wow, yeah,
And it might be something that's required for the farm that you're running. And
yeah,
then you realize I don't have the ability to do it.
yeah,
Right. And that could happen. And so it's nice to have that, I think, at least in your back pocket, knowing that that's going to be coming. Well, you could
yeah,
choose to participate as much or as little as you want, but to
Yeah.
educate yourself, I think, is really important. And that's kind of why I'm at it. I want to educate myself. I want to learn. So, Andrew, I'm coming to you because you know that I still have my crypto under a rock somewhere. I refuse to
So
look
good.
at it. I sent you an
It's good.
email or a
Mm-hmm.
message the other day, and I said, "Hey, Andrew, if it ever goes above 40, please let me know." All right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you
Yeah.
said yes. I'll keep an eye out on it. But you, but listen, you also used a lot of terms, a lot of things. I think that over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to be touching on,
Yeah.
like I don't know what a wallet is. If there's a cold wallet, is there a hot wallet? And what
There's a
is
hot
that
wallet.
anyway? I have no.
Yeah,
Is there
exactly.
really? See,
Well,
I
I'm
didn't know
yeah,
that.
and
So
that's the kind of stuff what we plan on doing is just over the next weeks because we're going to do this once a week. We're going to hang out and just talk about crypto stuff and talk about life. And we're two friends, and we would do this anyways. But we thought, hey, let's just put it on the internet, and if anybody wants to hang out with us as well, they're more than welcome. And so we are excited to go on this journey together. And with any of you that are interested in listening and participating, maybe leave a comment with anything that you're interested in us talking about that we could put on the list for future shows. But we're super excited about this and are looking forward to many more days ahead. You have any thoughts as we close this thing out?
yeah, man, I got two things. One is for anybody who watches this, we don't have all the answers to everything. I definitely don't,
No.
right? But this is a journey that we're on together. We're gonna discover things that we didn't know before. We're gonna learn more. And everything that we learn, we're gonna share with you. And
Yeah.
there might be things you know that we don't know, and we're more than happy to learn from you guys
So
as well,
so
right?
much. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, we also realize that everybody's at a different place in terms of their knowledge. So, Andrew, what does it look like next week? Do we know what we're going to start with next week?
Yeah, I think next week we're going to talk about just the basis of money and how do we save it. We all deal with money.
Sounds
We
good.
all have it in different ways, some of us more than others, but we have it. So, how do we use it and how do we save it? So, I think that's what we're going to talk about next week.
I love it. We're going to start with some foundational stuff. And some of you out there are going to say, hey, I already know a ton of things about money. And you may know a lot about traditional forms of money. But I think that what we'll be also touching on is what does that then look like when we transition to cryptocurrency, right? And I think you'll get a lot out of the show next week.
Yeah.
How'd that go, man? Good?
I think it was good. You think it was good?
I do. See y'all next week.
All right.